At this point, let's talk about outlines. Outlines can serve two purposes. I usually use them to begin an essay or to kind of get started with an essay in which maybe I'm doing research or I'm doing something that I don't feel comfortable just writing sentence to sentence, or I'm having difficulty writing that first draft. Sometimes I'll use an outline to kind of get an overview of the argument, and which gets us to the second purpose is by creating that outline, we are making sure that we are maintaining that same argument all the way through. So let's go ahead and take a look at outlines. When we're creating outlines, really what we want to look at are paragraphs and paragraph structures. I usually leave off the introduction and the conclusion. I just want to make sure that I have a solid argument throughout the body of my essay, and then I can include an introduction or a conclusion afterwards. So when looking at an outline, we always want to start with the thesis. I want to make sure that we have a strong thesis to give us direction throughout the essay. Now, this thesis can change at any time. I might change the criteria, the ordering of the criteria. I might even change my major claim. But to have a thesis to begin with kind of gives me some direction. After the thesis, I'm going to look at my topic sentences. I want to make sure that they're making minor claims on the thesis. One thing I might do is I might write out my thesis and then write the topic sentences directly below that, just so I know what I'm going to talk about in each paragraph. With the topic sentences, we then are going to include our evidence. Our evidence might consist of 3 points, might consist of more than three, but I want to maybe list out what evidence I'm going to use to support that topic sentence, which will tie back into my thesis. So for the evidence, I'm probably going to be pulling quotes out of my source material. For research papers, we know that we're not going to rely on our own personal experience. And so really all of my evidence is going to come from my source material. So I'm going to start collecting that into these categories under that topic sentence. Now, I'm not going to end with source material. I'm always going to tie that back into my thesis. And so I'm going to create some type of tie-in. I'm going to say if all this evidence is true, and then tie it back into my major claim, then my major claim is now validated. So I want to create this for every paragraph. And if I do this, again, I'm going to have a more solid argument that flows from one paragraph to the next. If I do this, I should get an outline that looks similar to what I have on the screen now. And I can then start to plug in my information. I'm going to start with the thesis. Once I have my thesis in, I can see what I need to support throughout the essay. So I'm looking at risks of cyber victimization, escalating mental health problems, and negatively affecting physical life with eating habits and sleep routines. So these are my criteria from what social media does. In order to create my topic sentences, now I can separate these out. I can say my first one will deal with victimization. My second one will deal with mental health problems. My third one, it could be physical life with eating habits. And then my fourth could be physical life with sleep routines. So I'm going to fill those in next. Now, am I happy with the use of first, second, third, and final? I might change that. Again, none of this is set in stone. We're able to change things for effect all the way through. In fact, if I'm plugging these in after I've written the essay, I might realize I have first, second, third, final, and it might be something I wasn't aware of when I was writing. And maybe that's something that I will change using one of those different transition strategies that we've discussed earlier. Now that I have my topic sentences in, you can see that it's following that pattern given in the thesis. I have cyber victimization, cyber victimized. I have mental health problems. I have here anxiety and depression. I have physical life, eating habits. I have here eating. I have physical life with sleep routines, and here I have sleeping habits. Now, in this case, I only have 4 body paragraphs, so I can go ahead and get rid of this 5th one. But now I can see an outline of my argument, and I can see that every paragraph is following exactly what the thesis does. This is one of the biggest problems in writing is that the writer is not aware of what the thesis is claiming and is not supporting that thesis throughout the essay. So creating an outline will really help. Now, at this point, I can start to plug in my evidence. Once I've filled in the evidence portion, I can see here some problems. The main problem is I have just one source to support this claim about victimization. I want to bring in other sources so I can see from just this outline that I need additional source material. I probably want to include at least one more source in order to make this a valid point. As I look at these pieces of evidence, really all I have here are the quotes. I'm going to need to explain them afterwards. I'm going to need to build context for them beforehand. But all I'm really doing is creating this outline just to see an overview of what my essay looks like. Once I have my evidence in, and again, I'm probably going to include another source here, then I'm going to create my tie-in back to the thesis. Let's look at the tie-in that I've created. If the number of hours a child spends browsing and posting on social media per day increases, that person is more vulnerable to cyber victimization, therefore more likely to be a victim. The amount of time allowed to minors by their parents, therefore, should be limited so they're less likely to be victimized. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the evidence and I'm kind of giving a so what statement that ties back to my thesis. Is this a perfect tie-in? Possibly. I am talking about limited time for social media, and that's what my major claim is. So again, I might change this, I might move it around, especially as I bring in other source material. And once I do that, I can see a better overview of my essay. Now, once I have done this for each paragraph, it's almost like my essay is written as far as just the skeleton of it. Now I can fill it in with my explanations, my context. I can make sure my transitions work. At that point, I can put on an introduction, conclusion, and really all I have left from there are revisions and editing. So if you're having difficulty starting an essay, this is a great way to begin. But again, if you have an essay written, plug in your information into an outline like this, and you can see if your argument is doing exactly what you're promising. I highly encourage you to use outlines. I know it might seem like a tedious chore that takes up time, but in the long run, it really saves you time as opposed to trying to revise the essay just by going from start to finish. And it will save you time, especially if you don't want to have to revise your essay for a better grade. It's better to do the outline up front and get the good grade to begin with.